So young people are being enticed to do two things. One is to three things, to adopt an extremely simple-minded view of the problems and opportunities that confront us. Second, to claim a completely unearned moral virtue merely on the basis of a vague sentiment. And third, and more dangerously, to localize the problem of evil in the minds and souls of the people who are hypothetically opposed to their self-aggrandizing sentiment. And the combination of those three moral errors is really dangerously toxic. And that dangerous toxicity, I would say, is manifesting itself in such things as this idiot insistence, let's say in the UK, because they're suffering from this more than any other place now, maybe except Germany, on the moral benefits of an impossible net zero, right? The rubber is really starting to hit the road in the last couple of years as energy prices have spiked out of reach of many people. And the unreliability of these hypothetically benevolent renewables has become more and more self-evident. And so we're walking a very dangerous moral path here, right? Easy moral virtue.
Definitely.
Our inability to point out that a lot of this moral virtue is driven by an unthinking ignorance, combined with this temptation to demonize those who, well, like Lomberg, Schellenberger, you're a good example as well, who are standing up and saying, hey, wait a minute, everyone. We've lifted billions of people out of absolute privation and starvation as a consequence of the utilization of fossil fuels, and they're so fundamental that we can't shift away from them rapidly. That's actually practically impossible without tilting people into the kind of abject poverty that's going to cause widespread starvation. It's like, that doesn't sound like a case being made by Satan to me.
No, I do think that the energy crisis is an enormous educational opportunity. It's obviously a tragedy. And it's, as somebody who's been talking about this for 15 years and advising in the opposite direction, it's very sad to see myself being right in terms of if you artificially restrict the supply of fossil fuels in a world that needs more energy and you don't have a viable near-term replacement, then prices are going to skyrocket, including food prices and the price of everything else. Like this was obvious that this was going to happen, and it's hard to see it. But at least the benefit is that people can see that the establishment has failed. That's the benefit of a crisis. People see the establishment has failed. And the key is, in my view, two things. One is the right people need to be implicated and the right people need to be vindicated. And I say the right people need to be implicated not as a vindictive person at all, but it's very important when you have a crisis, and this happened with 9/11, happened with the financial crisis, you need to have some idea of who is responsible and then who was right and gave us better advice. If you look at today's energy crisis, the number one thing that is scary about it is that it is a crisis that has come from the net zero movement, not even only achieving 1% of their goals. So they have not even reduced the supply of fossil fuels. I want to stress that again. They haven't even reduced the supply. They just slowed its rate of growth. They already wanted to dramatically reduce the supply. That was their goal. We were supposed to be using way less fossil fuel by now. They just slowed the growth, and that was enough to cause a global energy crisis in a world that needs far more energy. So that should really wake us up. What if we actually start on their path of getting rid of fossil fuels? And again, we have 27 years now, 27 years and less than a month as we record this to achieve net zero, which in effect means getting rid of fossil fuels. We could talk about offsets and stuff, but that doesn't work at any scale that there's any evidence of. So it's really this homicidal movement in its consequences. And I do think people are waking up, and they're particularly waking up to the idea that, hey, we ignored the benefits of fossil fuels. What I call our designated experts did this. And these people need to be jettisoned. You cannot listen to anybody about energy and climate who ignores the benefits of fossil fuels to billions of people, because if you do, you get an energy crisis. And if we keep listening to them, it's going to get a lot worse.
Well, the other thing that you see being the drum being beaten on the side of the radical left, for example,